Is imagination simply contained in the mind? Or does it tap into an unseen world with messages waiting to be told? There is a place where legends cross over into our world, where strange visions and whispers beckon, and superstition takes hold. Step into the Black Cat's shadow.
I'm Rod Serling. I would like to invite you to join me for the telling of 3 stories represented in this gallery by these paintings, to be displayed here for the first time. Each is a collector's item in its own way, not because of any special artistic quality, but because each captures on a canvas, suspends in time and space, a frozen moment in a nightmare. Join me for the unveiling at the Night Gallery.
Welcome back to the Black Cat Shadow. I'm your host, Andy, podcasting from Kansas City, Missouri.
And I'm Phantom Dark Dave, coming at you from the heart of Texas.
And today we have a special episode for you guys. We're going to be talking about the Night Gallery, the TV series by Rod Serling, the guy that did the Twilight Zone series. And to help us out with that, we have 2 special guests. We have Hope and George from the Fright Club podcast. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, me and Dave are big fans of your show, and maybe before we get started, just let the listeners know where they can find your show, the name of your show, kind of what you guys do on your show.
Well, yeah, it's the Fright Club podcast. It all comes from an offshoot of our website, which is maddwolf.com, MADDWOLF, and Fright Club it started as a monthly film series here in Columbus, Ohio, where we're based, and that's how it continues. And then about a year or so ago, maybe a year and a half, we started also doing a live podcast at the same night that we show a film. So we've added that into it. We get together, we have a little happy hour, and then we tape our podcast about the subject for that night and count down a certain topic that usually Hope picks. And then we see one of the movies that we talk about. We see it on the big screen that night. So it's gotten to be a nice little thing. And we always appreciate all the feedback.
Yeah. So that's once a month we do the live, and then we do a second podcast a month that we record. And actually, Dave has been a co-host a couple of times.
Yeah.
Hammer. We did Hammer Horror with Dave.
Vincent Price.
And Vincent Price. But Hammer Horror, that was very popular.
Yeah,
People like that. They were sad that we didn't just talk about like the hot babes of Hammer, that we actually we picked movies based on movie quality, but that's okay.
Yeah, no, those were some great episodes. So yeah, everybody out there, go check out Fright Club. Me and Dave love them. They're a fun podcast to listen to. It's like it's really well produced. It's like a radio show. You guys make me think of like a morning a morning radio show, like talking about horror. So it's really cool. Like I can listen to it while I'm out driving around. Yeah, so it's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So without further ado, the show that brings us all together tonight is the Night Gallery. And for people that don't know about the Night Gallery, basically it's a TV show where every week, I guess it was like a weekly show, and every episode it was like they would have like 2 or 3 little short stories in each episode. So it's kind of like the Twilight Zone. If most everybody knows what the Twilight Zone is. It was created by Rod Serling, and he is the same guy that did the Night Gallery. But the Night Gallery is kind of like Twilight Zone. It's kind of like a little bit darker sibling. It's I don't know. It was created in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. So I think it has more of the 70s like sensibilities, kind of more. On the Twilight Zone, it had a lot of science fiction elements that they explored, and it was earlier in time, and I think there was like this cultural change going on when Night Gallery happened. So I think that influenced a lot of these episodes, and I think they kind of like went into they kind of went to edgier topics, maybe. They went edgier directions. So I think the Night Gallery is probably more known for its horror-themed episodes. But there was certainly more of the sci-fi stuff too, and even some humor mixed in there with it all. So, Hope and George, like, what's some of your, like, what's a favorite episode of your guys's?
Well, I've started talking about the Night Gallery on our podcast a while ago because it was something that I kind of grew up with. It went off the air in 1973. I was 9 years old, so I got on the tail end of it, and even though I watched The Twilight Zone, I was more interested in Night Gallery because I wasn't always allowed to stay up late enough to see it, and when I did, it was always so freaky and sometimes just scared the living crap out of me, and I started relating that story about my favorite episode, which is called The Cemetery.
Which was the pilot.
It was on the pilot episode, yeah. And it scared the living bejesus out of me when I was, 8 or 9 years old. And I've always come back to that because in different podcasts we've been on or different times that we've talked about, okay, the scariest thing. I have to say, even today, when I think about movies or TV, that is the thing that scared me the most. I know I was a child at the time, but I'm telling you, man, I was terrified. And I've always, over the years and decades since then, I've always kind of felt that Night Gallery just didn't get the due. Everybody loves the Twilight Zone, and I'm not saying I don't, but I always thought, hey, what about Night Gallery? I mean, that stuff was great from the very opening that was so freaky, all those twisting faces.
Yeah.
I just have maybe it's a nostalgic love, but I have a love for it.
Yeah, I'd never seen the Night Gallery, and George has talked about the pilot forever. But it wasn't until the idea for this podcast came up, I finally just sat down and watched them all. I'd not seen it before. And George always mentioned that the setup for each episode is that you're in this art gallery and you're going to see, which is basically a horror short, but it's all related to some creepy painting that they're going to show you.
Yeah.
And it's a really effective setup for these little short pieces.
Because the paintings are creepy.
Yeah, but as you said, Andy, I mean, some of them are funny. And some of them are kind of sci-fi, but there are, I think, in almost every episode, there's at least one that you would just call flat out a horror short. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. I think that's really what sets it apart from Twilight Zone. Plus, I think, if I'm not wrong, Twilight Zone was always a single half-hour episode, where sometimes the Night Gallery episodes was like a full half-hour length episode, but a lot of times it was. It was like 3 or 4 or 5 little shorts, which kind of gave it a nice variety.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you guys mentioned the paintings. Man, those paintings are really cool. I mean, I would love to have some of those to hang around my house. My wife,
it's true.
My wife probably wouldn't appreciate it, but I think there's definitely some really cool paintings that they have, and just the way that Rod Serling, he always has a way with words, and when he's introducing these episodes, it's really cool how he does that. And speaking of the pilot episode, I mean, that was probably one of the best and one of the best episodes of the series, but also they touched on some kind of sensitive topics, and I guess they did that in the Twilight Zone too, with the Nazi war criminal, and also kind of class. I don't know if it's class warfare, but you got these the haves and the have-nots. You kind of have these things, and the Twilight Zone, I guess, really to talk about that stuff too. Even there was that one controversial episode of the Twilight Zone. It was the one with George Takei. I can't remember the name, but where he was a Japanese man, and he was hired to clean this. I think he was a war veteran, and so there was some tension between the two. He was hired to clean this war veteran's attic, and then the war veteran kept bringing up the war, and so it was really kind of controversial at the time. And I think they don't really play that episode on TV too much. But
yeah.
But anyway, getting back to this pilot episode, you've got you got the cemetery where it's Roddy McDowall. He's great in that, and then you have Eyes, which is a rich woman. She basically. Oh, it was the dad from Happy Days, wasn't it? That was the guy that...
Yes, Tom Bosley.
Yeah, Tom Bosley, yeah.
That one's actually directed by Steven Spielberg, that segment. It was one of the very first jobs that he got, and of course the woman is Joan Crawford. And at the time, Steven Spielberg was in his early 20s,
in his
I think.
early 20s.
And here he is directing Joan Crawford. And that was part of the pilot episode. It's another reason that really stands out, right from the beginning of the series.
Yeah, and then you got The Escape Route, which is about a Nazi war criminal that's, he's trying to hide out, he's trying to kind of eke out an existence, and it kind of catches up, his past catches up with him. But yeah, it's such a great episode for the pilot episode, because sometimes I think sometimes shows, they take a few, I don't know, maybe not necessarily a few seasons, but they take a little while to kind of get their footing and find their groove. But I think Night Gallery kind of came out of the gate at a high point. And of course, there were some episodes that were not as good as others, but
Sure.
Yeah, definitely that pilot episode was great. Me and Dave were actually talking about one episode before we added you guys on. We were talking about an episode called A Question of Fear. Do you guys?
Yeah. We love that one.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I mean, that one was, first of all, you got Leslie Nielsen, but he's playing this hard ass war veteran, and so this older gentleman bets him $15,000 that he can't survive one night in this supposedly haunted mansion that the older man owns. And so, Leslie Nielsen's like, sure, I can do anything, and I'll stay the night in your house. But the interesting thing is something will probably happen, but you're just not, you don't really know the extent of where this goes. And I think Dave mentioned, you were mentioning you don't know what's real and what's not real and things like that. And, you definitely have these gimmicks set up, in the house to try and scare the colonel, scare this war veteran, but he's not having it. But then you have other things that happen later on. And, Dave, I want to let you share your thoughts on that episode, because you were sharing some pretty good stuff before.
Yeah, so I didn't even know that Leslie Nielsen had done anything horror related before doing Prom Night. I thought that was the first thing horror he did, but this was before Prom Night. So it was surprising to see him show up in this, but I loved it. And a big vibe that I got for Question of Fear was it had this entire Scooby-Doo theme going on.
Right, absolutely.
Did you guys get that? Okay.
Yes.
He's walking around the mansion, and there's going to be bumps in the night, and certain things are. I believe they said that this episode was one of the first ones to use holographic images as well. Oh. But they created some virtual-looking ghosts that I thought were pretty creepy. I could only imagine for its time. And it just gave me that Scooby-Doo feel of him walking around. All he has is a flashlight, and what you see disappears in front of your eyes, and you don't know if it's real or if someone's, playing a trick on you.
Yeah, and then also at the end, it's not exactly, I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids, but you do kind of get to see how they pulled it off, at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of layers to that one, actually, and I think that because you feel like you're being led in one direction during the majority of the story, then when the reveal comes at the end, it is kind of like a gut punch. You're like, oh, I enjoy that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually telling Andy the only thing I would have changed about that episode, which is a high note because on most of these I felt like there was things that should have been tweaked a little different, but on this episode, whenever the climatic scene happens and then it shows the TV screen, I would have had the guy said something like, I was bluffing or something like that. Just kind of like you said, gut punch, but even just with a little bit of sweet on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did even include some H.P. Lovecraft type stories. And, there's one called Professor Peabody's Last Lecture. And it's about a college professor that he's teaching a class on mythology, I think, and they kind of get into the lore of Lovecraft's universe, with Cthulhu and things like that. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, that's not real, and, but then he, through the course of the little segment there, it starts storming outside and all the students are getting scared. He's like, oh, it's there's nothing's going to happen. And then he actually, it gets changed into this weird creature at the end. So that was pretty cool. I like that one.
I liked, the one I liked, is called The Caterpillar, which is a weird name for it because it's actually about an earwig.
Right.
But I loved that one. I when I watched it, I remember thinking like I don't know, 15, 20 minutes into it, like, no, we get it. Okay, no, we get it. Like, why is it still going on? And then because there was like a different climax, and then there was a different climax at the end. You're like, oh my god, oh no, and I just loved the way it kept just pulling you further into it. You kept thinking like, what else is going to happen? And then every time something else happened, it was just horrible.
Oh yeah.
That was Joanna Pettit who did a few of these.
She
did so much TV back in the 70s and in the 80s, and she did 2 or 3 of these, I think, that we watched.
Actually, to jump in on that one, something I found kind of weird about Caterpillar, besides what you said was exact. I like how you think the story's going one way, and then you see kind of the dark turn it's going to take, but even when you're trying to think of everything, they kind of hit you with one last thing that you don't really consider. Like, it's kind of one of those, if bad only got worse, what could it be situations? Yeah. And I remember even me, who I tend to pride myself on predicting endings of things, I sat there just like, oh, that is terrible. you know,
and it's funny too, Dave, because you should have thought of it. Like, that's the thing I love the most when the final reveal is like, why didn't I think of that? You know, like, of course that, they're all sitting there and nobody's going to arrest him and nobody's being mean to him. And you're like, what's the, oh no. Yeah, that's good.
And I had to do some research too, because in this episode, there's a guy named Steven who pays Robinson £100 to do this little dirty deed that's going to potentially cause someone's death. And I was like, £100, how much is that? And I translated, that'd be 135 American dollars. And I was like, well, this was filmed in 1972. I don't know what year it was supposed to take place in, but just using 1972 as a reference, that today would translate to $793. So I was like, man, big chunk of change just to do something like that. But I was just thinking about what people would do for money. Like, that's just terrible.
Yeah.
I know. I have to, break down everything.
Speaking of what somebody will do for money, so another episode in season 2 is called Green Fingers, and it's the one actually with Cameron Mitchell in it. And he's like he's a land developer, and he's trying to get this elderly lady to sell her little plot of land. And he wants to build like a bunch of factories, and her little plot of land is right smack in the middle of where he wants to do all this. So they've had like company representatives going out to talk to her, say, hey, we'll buy you out. We'll give you a lot of money for your land, and she will not sell. And, she makes the comment that anything that she plants grows. And you find out that is really the case. Anything she plants grows. And I thought that was an interesting episode, especially the end was really creepy, I thought.
I'll tell you what, I want to jump in there. And, hey guys, I wanted to know, let the cat out of the bag. Vincent Price is in 2 of these episodes. Okay? You knew it was coming. So he was in Class of 1999, and he was in The Return of the Sorcerer. Which one of the 2 did you guys like better?
You know what? I don't want to be super disappointing. I didn't really like either one of them. Did you like them?
I was actually just going to say the same thing. I
thought they were super disappointing, but it's
because Vincent Price was in them. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just felt like, I mean, some of these are so really well written. And I think it's because a lot of them are actually just based on published short stories that they turned into teleplays. Yeah. But then some of them just felt like these sort of one-off, almost comedy sketches. And I think that's the couple that Vincent Price were in, I just didn't think they just weren't very good. So
the Class of 1999, I saw that as a Twilight Zone episode. I was like, what is this doing on Night Gallery? This had like sci-fi and social commentary written all over it. And then the Sorcerer one, I thought to myself, Vincent Price is doing a really good job, and I like the scenery. They use a lot of red, which I really like in there. But overall, there was nothing really satisfying about it because it was predictable, but it was kind of lame.
There was another one that I was disappointed in. It was called Whisper with Sally Field, and it was one of the ones that's the full half hour, and Dean Stockwell is in it, and it's even directed by I don't know how you pronounce his name. It's the guy who directed Jaws 2. So I thought, oh, this will be a great one, and
it was too. It was so
talky and
Yeah.
it didn't go anywhere.
I'm
and-
so glad you guys said that, because in my notes I wrote fourth wall, boring overall. Because the whole time they're talking to the camera, and I was like, why are you talking to the camera? And then, you have Sally Field, who is a medium, and she can hear the dead. And is it Dean Stockwell? Is that her boyfriend or husband? Did you guys pick up on one or the other?
I thought they were married. I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But-
I thought so. It seemed that way, but I wasn't sure.
He's a guy who's, he's got a career, and he gives it up to tag along with her, and she has multiple personalities. And, Doctor tries to tell him that what he's doing is unhealthy, and he's like, well, I have to do this or she wouldn't be who she is. But then I'm like, isn't that the point of why you're trying to get a doctor to help
Yeah,
her?
it was just stupid. I mean, it just
Stupid's
was.
a
It was
good-
just stupid. And then at the end, I thought, are we supposed to understand what's happening at the cemetery and why she's not? There was no good payoff, and I kept waiting
Right.
for us. I like ghost stories.
It seemed
but-
like it was going toward a bigger. It should have been a bigger payoff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because I thought, this is a young Sally Field. This is going to be like gold. Andy, what did you
Yeah.
think about? Did you get a chance to see Whisper?
Yeah,
was-
that was actually one of the first ones I watched, because in the DVD set it's like a bonus episode in the season 1 disc for some reason. I did watch it, and yeah, I think I agree with you guys. There wasn't a payoff. It was kind of a build up of her, like, is she being possessed or what's going on here? And there's probably like several of these that are kind of like that kind of lead you along, but then they just kind of end, and you're like, oh, I wish something else would have happened. That one was not one of my favorites. It's hard to remember, what even happened.
There was another one that I'm not even going to pretend I understood. I flat out did not understand, but I still loved it. And it was called The Big Surprise.
Yeah.
The Jeff Carradine. I was like, I
know.
have no idea what happened. I thought, what?
Yeah, because of the setup, it's like, okay, so this old man, these boys are, they're kind of afraid of this old man, and then he like tells them, hey, go dig under this tree and you'll find a big surprise. And you're like, and so your brain is working overtime, like, what are they going to find when they dig this hole? And of course, the boys go and dig the hole, and it's like, what? I totally didn't understand that. What happened?
I liked it. Like, I enjoyed it. I just remember thinking I should understand why this is what he finds in this hole, and I just don't.
Right. Oh, yeah. There was another one that caught my attention here. Do you guys remember one called Brenda? It's about the little girl that she's staying at their family summer home on the beach, and she finds this weird, like, I was like a seaweed creature or something, or this weird creature in a quarry, and she kind of like traps it in the quarry or something. And she's really like annoying though. Like, she doesn't have any friends because she, like at the beginning of the episode, she kicks over this girl's sandcastle, and she doesn't understand why the girl really hates her, really doesn't like her. And that was just a weird episode because she kind of like has this weird relationship with this creature. Like, she kind of does the same thing to it. She traps it in this quarry. But it's like, it's just weird. Like, I guess the little girl that played the part did a pretty good job because, you believe that she's really like this, but she just doesn't have any concept of like other people, like how other people feel. I guess she's kind of like a sociopath or something a little bit.
Sure.
But, I don't know. It was an interesting episode, definitely.
Yeah, there was another one. I'm not even sure if I liked it. I mean, I liked it. I guess like you said, some of them, it felt more like a Twilight Zone episode to me because it was sort of like a time travel kind of thing. The one is called Tell David with Sandra Dee, and she gets like lost in a rainstorm and has to stop at a house to ask directions. And then, she's talking to this couple and they want her to come back and visit. And eventually she realizes that the person in the house, the adult man in the house, is in fact her 4-year-old son.
Yeah.
So she sees her own future. And then what's interesting is at the end, you get the whole feeling that the point of the story is she sees her future so that she can change it. And instead she just resigns herself to it and does this awful thing. And I thought that was it didn't feel like it fit for Night Gallery. It definitely felt more like a Twilight Zone sort of, sci-fi thing. But it was a very clever way to misdirect you because you thought the whole time that you understood what was going to happen, and then the opposite thing happened. So I thought it was pretty clever.
One of the other ones that stuck out for me was You Can't Get Help Like That Anymore.
Oh, it's a good one.
Yeah, Cloris Leachman
Yep.
Was in that, and I thought it was interesting, especially now, looking back on it now, and how technology has taken over our lives. And this episode had kind of a little bit of a Stepford theme, but it also had just a little bit of that underlying Stanford prison thing about what people will resort to once they have ultimate power over somebody else.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of different themes in that one. I thought that was pretty effective. That was one of my favorites that we went back and looked at.
I really liked that one, beginning to end. I thought that was a really good one. I love Cloris Leachman in that because you're used to just seeing her doing comedies, and you're used to seeing her being old.
Yeah, that's right. She wasn't always old.
No.
So, talking about beginning to end, there's, as we said before, sometimes there's a few different segments to make up a full episode. And I thought there was one that was going to be where each segment was perfect. And it almost happened. And it was season 2, episode 12, divided up from Cool Air, Camera Obscura, and then Quoth the Raven. And I looked at what each one represents, and I'm like, this is going to be perfect. This is going to be the greatest, 45-minute segment. And so you start with Cool Air, which I absolutely loved. I loved the story from H.P. Lovecraft. I thought they did a really good representation of it. You have, Henry Darrow, who plays Juan Munez, and Barbara Rush, who plays Agatha Howard. And I kind of talked about this before when we did the Twilight Zone episode where I recommended this one to you, Andy. So real quick, did you get a chance to watch Cool Air?
Yeah, I did. I did watch that one. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I think I was a little. I guess I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting something different than what happened at the end, or something. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was cool. I liked it though.
What did you guys think of it?
You know what? I don't think I saw that one.
No, I did not see that one.
No, I feel bad.
Okay.
I wish I had.
That one fell through the cracks. No, that's okay. There was way too many episodes to try to cover all of them. But Cool Air is one of my personal favorites because the read itself is kind of dry and you don't get a lot out of it in the book. And then to see an episode based on it, you're kind of excited because you want to see more about what it is. And Lovecraft's kind of hard to read anyway, I'm not going to lie. And so it's really excited when you can see something based on his work. And I thought the acting was solid in it, and I thought that the atmosphere was completely believable. And I thought it had a really good payoff. So kind of everything you need. And then following Cool Air was Camera Obscura, which I had to see because I'm a Star Trek fan, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Odo is in this, where he plays William Sharstead. And basically he visits Mr. Gingold 3 days before his loan is due, and he just wants reassurance that he's going to make his payment. And so the guy, who you can obviously tell is beating around the bush and he's dodging the question, he just begins to show him the rare things that he collects around his house. And one of them is a rare camera that features, photos of places that have been demolished and are from the early 1900s. And so you have the guy who's, wanting payment on this loan, who's really just trying to bite his tongue and not snap at the guy, but in the end, he's only there for money. And so he humors him to look at one more thing. And so he begins to look at these photographs, and he starts to take interest in there because he's realizing a lot of these buildings he demolished or had closed himself because people didn't make their payments on there. And so you start to get that, okay, this guy expecting the loan, he's the bad guy because, he's not being humane and letting people pay off their loans in extended times. And there's something about this camera where he ends up getting the guy trapped in the photographs. It's a very Twilight Zone-ish thing, but I love his name's hard to pronounce. It's Rene Auberjonois. Yeah. I hope I didn't butcher that too bad, but he's fantastic, and you get a younger version with long hair in this one, and he's great. And then the third one is Quoth the Raven. I'm like, oh well, this has to be good. It's Edgar Allan Poe. There's nothing bad about this. And it starts off, and first off, I'm just going to get into it. You get a fat Edgar Allan Poe. I'm like, what? Like, that guy doesn't look like Poe. But I'm not like that. I'm like, okay, whatever. If he can do it, he can do it. And so I'm watching it, and he's sitting there, and okay, he's going to be writing the Raven. I'm like, cool. He's got his ink feather pen. He's writing away, his quail. He's doing his thing. And then up in the corner, there's a raven, and the raven's talking to him, and he's trying to write his lines, and he gets the first few down, and he can't figure out how to rhyme one of his words. And then the bird says it for him. And he basically, the bird says, like, Drury, you idiot, or whatever it is. And he throws something at the bird, and it's over. And that's one of my big points on this is you can get excited about the shows, but you need to watch the time, because when there's only 2 minutes left in the show, I guess I was expecting a really awesome Raven story. I didn't get it.
Yeah, there were a bunch like that, the really short ones, and you'll see, and it'll be like a Dracula in really bad green makeup, and you're this is I'm not going to watch the rest of this. This is going to be terrible.
Then there's the one that it's not very scary, but it always comes up. The Tune and Dance Cafe.
I like that one. That was one that you had mentioned, before, and I was eager to see it. And I did like it.
It got a little bit of extra notoriety because it spurred a hit song. I mean, the song that is the Tune and Dance Cafe, by popular demand, ended up being released and was a #1 country single called "If You Leave Me Tonight I'll Cry," which I think was written specifically for this episode and ended up being a great big hit song. So that one usually comes up. It's pretty solid. It's not the best one, but it's pretty solid.
No, it is. It kind of plays like a sci-fi country song.
Yeah.
It's like this sort of back and forth in time thing, but it's it's a pretty good one. Yeah.
Okay, there was one though that was just like 2 minutes that I won't butcher. Did you guys see The Merciful?
No.
Where it starts off with a guy. It is, right? He's sitting in a rocking chair, and he's an older guy, and it doesn't look like he's speaking. And you notice next to him, there's a brick wall being put in, and there's a lady on the other side who's, doing the masonry work, and she's like, "Don't worry, in a few more rows, it'll all be over." And you're like, "Oh, this is terrible." And you kind of get that, Cask of Amontillado feeling. You're like, "What's going on?" And man, since you guys haven't seen it, I don't know if I should ruin it, because it's only 2 minutes. But the cool thing is you're watching it. You know exactly what you're watching, but then the funny part is you don't. And that's what actually makes it the 2 minutes better than some of these 20-minute segments.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah, we'll have to look that one up.
Yeah, definitely.
And the funny thing too that I realized going back and watching these on new technology, new mediums, is when you get a good look at Rod Serling. I mean, this guy, first of all, he's the mound of hair. He's a hairy dude. And then his teeth, he looked like he just got done smoking 3 packs of cigarettes when he came in here. And his suit is just a little bit disheveled, and he's got that voice because he wrote a lot of these teleplays, they called them, and they were very well. But man, he's a guy who looked like he'd done some hard living, and he just kind of wandered in on the set and read, "All right, we're gonna kick some ass, we're gonna scare some kids,"
See, I thought that was his way of just blending into the 70s vibe, because when I look back at the Twilight Zone, he was like that clean cut, your grandfather that, is proper. And then in this one, like you said, he had that mound of hair that was really poofy and kind of went side to side.
No, now you look at him and he's like, man, he tore the 70s up. He got every last ounce out of the 70s, and you can just see it in his face.
So, Andy, what other ones did you like or didn't like?
There was one. Let me see what the name of it was here. It's one about the. I guess he was like a robber, and he was shot, and so he was trying to. He stumbled into this mortuary's house.
That was the Death in the Family.
Yeah, that one was really interesting.
That one was Desi Arnaz Jr. He was the murderer.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so that something that you're saying to yourself, this mortician is being way too nice to this thief or this robber. The mortician's not calling the police. He's inviting the thief in. It's like, okay, there's going to be something going on. And then when you find out what he wants the thief for, you're like, whoa, that's kind of creepy.
Well, yeah, because the whole episode opens up with, he's the funeral director at the house, and these guys just drop off a stiff in a box, and they're like, we'll come back later for the stretcher. And he's like, well, what is this? Like, oh, he came from the home. He's been there for 30 years. He has no family. You know, he doesn't really get a proper funeral. They give you $100. Do what you can with it. And then he's very brokenhearted about it. And you think it's because, you know, he just overly cares about his job or he's extremely sympathetic. But then as you watch the episode, you realize the terminology of he has no family, nobody really cares about him, goes a whole nother direction for what his intentions are. And if anybody hasn't seen this episode, I would say very similar to Masters of Horror Season 2 family episode, I think pulls a little bit from this.
Mm-hmm.
Ho ho.
But I dig it. Andy, that's a good call. Death in the Family is a good episode. And it actually comes on right before The Merciful. So if you get that, you get 2 for 1.
There you go.
Yeah. There was one called The Flip Side of Satan that was interesting. It was about this disc jockey that gets transferred to this little backwater radio station. And it's like all the records are these weird, like creepy organ music and stuff. And, you know, it's like, I think that he ends up, you know, it's like some kind of like the Devil's radio station or something like that. I can't remember now. But it was an interesting episode. But I don't know if you guys have seen that one or not.
I have not seen that one, but
I'll have to go back and find it, though.
Yeah, that one's got DJ in it. That's right up your alley.
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's on season 2, episode 3, the same episode that had Since Aunt Ada Came to Stay, which I think that's one that people kind of know. I think that's one of the kind of freakier episodes because that one's about a couple. You know, they have the wife's aunt live with them, but she's like the husband suspects she's a witch, but I think like he doesn't know for sure. But like, there's all these creepy things happening, and like you find out that you know the aunt may have some reasons for wanting to live with them, and that one's a good one. So yeah, that whole episode's pretty cool.
One of the ones I was disappointed in, it's another one actually that Joanna Pettit is in. It's called House. And I wanted to see it because John Astin, right, from The Addams Family, directed it.
Oh yeah.
And it's just this weird circular dream sequence.
Yeah.
And she's just annoying. The whole time I was like, "Oh my God, you're so annoying."
Yeah, that was disappointing.
I was disappointed in that one. I had higher hopes for that.
So piggybacking off that, another disappointing one directed by John Astin. Did you guys see Fear of Spiders?
No.
Oh,
It's also terrible. It's and I hate to say it, it's got, you know, Patrick O'Neill and Kim Stanley in it, and they're apartment residents, and she, you know, she is in love with him. She wants to be with him. He doesn't want anything to do with her until he realizes that his apartment is infested with spiders. And so that's the one thing that he's afraid of. And so, you know, he decides that he's going to go ahead and go stay with her and be all lovey-dovey with her now. And she's like, "Why are you doing this?" And he's like, "Oh, you know, because you're right. You're beautiful and we should be together. And my apartment's infested with spiders." And she's like, "What?" And then she's like, "No, it's not." And he's like, "Yeah, there's one. It's the size of a dog." And she's like, there's a spider the size of a dog in your apartment. He's like, "Yes, I'll show you." She's like, "Let's go look." And then they go back to the apartment, and then you get a somewhat satisfying but not really type ending. You could probably predict it by just the way I describe it. But overall, something called Fear of Spiders would have been a little better.
Yeah.
And
I'm now seeing 2 for 2, so maybe John Astin, better actor than director. I don't know.
Yeah, that could be.
Well, one that was really disturbed, one that kind of like got to me was the one called Sins of the Father, and it's got with old John Boy in there.
John Boy.
Yeah.
It's it's the concept of the Sin Eater, and it's a kind of a fascinating ritual thing there, and it does kind of have a twist. The episode does, but it's basically it's in Wales where there's this famine that's been going on, so like food's really scarce. So so the concept of the Sin Eater is where there is a person called the Sin Eater, and what they do is like when somebody dies, this person will go to the wake or the funeral, whatever, and let's see. I think they are. It's like this one person that's designated to eat this food. It's like, I don't know if it's like, it's just the food that's cooked and it's placed around the corpse, but
they're all very, very hungry, and if they have to kind of make that deal with the devil, they get to eat all that, but at the same time they're taking on the sins of the dead person.
Right.
So the dead person can sort of pass clean into the next life, but then the person is left behind, and so the sin eater is ill and can't make it. So his wife sends Richard Thomas, John Boy, their son, and it's sad, right? I mean, the whole episode I think kind of makes you sad. And one of the things I liked about it, Barbara Steele, who's always awesome.
Oh yeah,
she's the widow, and she's looking at this kid. She doesn't want him to do it. He's just a kid. Like, she's like, I don't want him, saddled with all the sins of my stupid husband. But she lets him do it, and he doesn't want to do it either. So his mom says, just pretend you're going to eat the food and don't eat the food and bring it back here. So it's sort of creepy watching him want to eat the food. Like, I remember thinking, I think I've watched this enough of him salivating over this butter and everything. But yeah, the way it turns out is, it kind of sticks with you, you know, and I think partly because you just feel bad for this kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was on another one in season 2 here, the episode right before, it's called There Aren't Any More McBains. I thought that was kind of a cool one. It's about like a rich man that has a nephew that's kind of just like living off of him. His nephew's been going to college for like 5 or 6 years now, and he still hasn't graduated. So his uncle's like, okay, I'm going to cut you off if you don't graduate. And of course he doesn't graduate, but what the uncle doesn't know is the nephew has been studying occult, like occult rituals and magic and things like that. So he like summons this he finds out he's like the descendant of this old like sorcerer or something called McBain, and so he's able to summon this demon that actually kills his uncle for him. So then he gets all the money, but then like the problem is now he has this like demon that's attached to him, and he starts going after everybody that's close to him that he actually wants in his life. I thought that was a kind of cool episode. I
love 70s like coven anything, right? Like anything that they made in the 70s that has like a satanic coven. I am so in. I don't know what their preoccupation was in this. It was everywhere. It was everywhere. It was in westerns. It was everywhere. They were so afraid of Satan in the 70s, but I love all of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Here, I'll jump in with this one because there's one where I like it so much, and it gets right to the very end, and then I feel like it becomes flawed. And it's not enough to ruin the entire episode for me, but it makes me wonder what it could have been. Did any of you guys get to watch season 3, episode 7? It's called Fright Night.
No,
and that's crazy.
Fright Night.
Okay, and then with that name, that's why I had to watch it.
Yeah.
Long story, it's a very simple synopsis. There's a guy, he's a writer, and so he and his wife move into a home that's left to them through somebody who had passed away. And this is great because it's not New York City, and they're now in the country, and he's finally going to get some writing done. Like, okay, simple, I like it. And so they stay there, and then this one is like a near perfect episode because the whole time you have creepy vibes up and down. There's great atmosphere, there's creepy music, the acting is solid. The story is satisfying. There's this trunk that's there in this attic, which has been converted to kind of like an office where he writes. And it's like, yeah, don't worry about the trunk here. Don't open it, whatever. Somebody's going to come pick it up. And they're like, okay. Well, they've been there forever. In a few months, no one's called. No one's came by to pick up the trunk. They're like, what's in the trunk? And then the writer guy starts to see the trunk move. Is he hallucinating, or is he seeing it for what it is? I don't know. Nobody knows. And then so you think, okay, this is going to be one of those stories where, his writing and, his reality is going to get mixed. We're not going to know what's really happening. And then so his wife hires somebody to come take the trunk away. Then all of a sudden they wake up the next day, the trunk's back. So then you realize, okay, there's something about this trunk that's meant to be here. And so you get this great vibe until the very end when you find out what's in the trunk and what the whole thing is about it. And I swear, I'm not lying, I feel like you were cheated with great special effects and an extremely childish sequence. It felt like I was watching Goosebumps at this point, because it had the potential of being this 1970s almost full-length feature. I compare it with like an Amityville Horror with a creep show-ish ending, and I was like, why did you do that? You had something so great going. So I think it's a guilty pleasure because so much of the episode is so satisfying, but then when I see that end, I'm just like, and it could have been better.
That's unfortunate.
But yeah, it's called Fright Night. It's worth watching, and then you can kind of see what I'm talking about, and then you can let me know if I'm full of shit or if you agree.
Yeah, I think one episode I thought was absolutely ridiculous. Like, especially, well, I mean, it was kind of cool up until the very end. So, kind of like what you're talking about, Dave. There's a segment called "The Nature of the Enemy," and it's one where these astronauts are going up to the moon, and so there was one flight that went up there to the moon, and they lost contact with this crew, and so they sent a second mission to see what happened to the first one. And of course, they find out, like, what's going on the moon. There's, it kind of plays into the whole notion that the moon is made out of cheese. It's really ridiculous. If you guys haven't seen it, I won't spoil it, but it's just really ridiculous how it turns out. But
there's one. Did you see the different ones? Speaking of sort of outer space ones, that was one. When I watched it at first, I thought I didn't like, and then I just realized, as I watched some of the others, that it kind of stuck with me. It really did. So it opens up with this dad who's on the phone. Of course, it's the future, so it's like a television phone that still looks like 1960s, and he's trying to arrange with some sort of social services something to do with his grossly, mutant son, and the social services just wants him to kill his son. Like, that's just how they deal with it at this future retro time period, and he won't do that. And so then she says, well, we do have a program. So it's like a foreign exchange student sort of thing. We send an Earthling to this planet, and they send one of their people back to Earth. So the son signs up for it, and the dad's never going to see him again. And the dad's all brokenhearted about it. What is he doing? He's sending his son to another planet, and he'll have to fend for himself. And he's an adult man, the son is. He's just got a cabbage for a head. That's basically what it is. He's got like a giant cabbage for a head. So then, of course, in the hallway, when he meets the exchange student who's coming back to Earth instead, it's like this gorgeous blonde man so Cabbage Head, asked him, why are you leaving your planet? And then the guy was like, what? You can see me, can't you? So, and then the twist comes from there, but it was one that I thought was more like sci-fi and campy and certainly in no way a horror. I was kind of, it started off, you thought where it could go horror. Anytime you're going to send somebody to another planet they haven't been there, you could always go horror, but it clearly didn't take that route. And I thought that I just thought I didn't particularly care for it, but it stayed with me longer than a lot of these. I think it was well acted, and I think it was probably just better written and a better sort of cohesive, complete story than a lot of these are. And I wound up liking it better than I thought I did.
Well, talking about some of the horror episodes, there was one that was based off an Ambrose Bierce short story. And it's called The Doll, and it's in season 1. And it's where a British Army colonel, he gets a package in the mail, and it's from like India. And he used to be stationed in India, but he's now back in England. But he gets this package from India, and I think he knows what, like, he suspects that there's something not right with it or whatever. I think he tells his housekeeper not to open the package, but it's already opened by the time he gets home, so he can't do anything about it. But it's his doll, and it's this really creepy looking doll. But that's a pretty cool episode. If you guys have never seen that, it's on season 1, episode 5. Definitely check that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it too. You're right. It's kind of, it reminds me a lot of Talking Tina from Twilight Zone. Just staying with the Rod Serling doll episodes. It's creepy, and then it's the whole the doll talks and does things, but only the girl gets to see that. And I like the payoff on that one, Andy. That's not a bad episode, actually. I think out of season 1, that one might be my favorite. But
yeah, it strikes me that aside from the pilot, I thought season 2 was stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And, it had more episodes too, so it had the opportunity. But overall, like you said, most of the episodes in season 2 are better. When I look back at my notes, I had a few season 3s, but predominantly all season 2. And it makes you wonder, the show only did like 7 episodes for its first season, then had a giant season 2, and then season 3, it went down to almost single segments. I think where, it's just one episode, 26 minutes each time, and that might have kind of been like the downfall of the show too.
Yeah, it might have been, because I do think, I think that I like sometimes seeing the full 30-minute, one story. But it's fun, too, to see the ones where you get more variety and a bunch of shorter episodes. It just breaks it up nicely.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, we talk about Rod Serling and everything, and he didn't really have as much creative control on this show as he did Twilight Zone, where everybody answered to him. He was thinking about doing Night Gallery as Twilight Zone was kind of coming to an end, because he wanted to do more of a horror based, but at that time CBS didn't want Twilight Zone to take the horror route. So that way when it ended, he said, cool, I got an idea for my horror show. So he's presenting this, and the only thing that he got to stay at was he wrote some segments and he got to remain the host. Otherwise, like you said, they just did teleplays on a whole bunch of already produced. He didn't have creative control over what stories got made and put in there, unfortunately.
Interesting.
And I think that might have been why, you only got 3 seasons versus Twilight Zone, which had 5.
You're right.
Plus all those nights at the Playboy Mansion.
Oh, yeah. Living those 70s.
Yeah.
One of the last episodes I'll bring up, just looking through, that I actually took the time to write notes about. There was nothing really amazing about the episode, but it always stayed with me to be an episode where I've seen it a few times. And it was in the 3rd season, called Something in the Woodwork. Don't know if you guys got a chance to see that, but it was a lonely alcoholic woman who lives by herself. She's divorced, and she's planning on getting her ex-husband back, and so she tells him, I need to talk to you, I have a surprise for you. And so she throws him a surprise birthday dinner, and when he shows up, she's excited to see him. He could care less, and she finds out he's in a hurry because he already has somebody waiting on him, so he's moved on, and this doesn't sit too well with her. And so unfortunately, what he doesn't know is she has a ghost in her attic that she seeks revenge on for him. So what happens in this story is this is one of those, again, just 26-minute straight run-through episodes where she gets him to go up into the attic, and then it becomes ex-husband versus ghost. And I won't tell you how it ends, but let's just say she never gets what she really, really wants.
No.
Does anyone say Beetlejuice 3 times?
No, and maybe that was the whole problem.
There was one more that I guess I would say I was disappointed in, because if you do a quick, at least when we did, do a quick search on the best episodes, it always comes up, and that's The Boy Who Predicted Earthquakes with Clint Howard.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was such a much. I mean,
no, yeah, I agree with you.
It wasn't scary. I know it was meant to be a commentary, a social commentary.
Sure.
But
about a little boy whose grandpa takes him to the local TV station, and they basically
make him a sideshow kind of a
right.
guy.
They pitch the idea that he will just talk about whatever he's been reading or about whatever he wants to talk about, and then all of a sudden he'll have a prediction and he'll share the prediction, and they do make it a show, even though the producer at first throws him out and tells him he's all kinds of horrible things. And then eventually he won't make the next prediction anymore. And then finally, when he makes the final prediction, it's like everyone will be happy, and there is something eerie about it. And part of it is just because Clint Howard is just effortlessly weird. You're like, what's the matter with this kid? And will somebody get him some braces? But
Spoiler, they never did.
No, they didn't give him any braces. He grew up to be a weird adult. But yeah, I think I had higher expectations.
Yeah.
You had higher expectations of a Clint Howard.
Yeah. Now that I
Shame.
say it out loud, I guess it doesn't make much sense. But
Yeah, it's really cool though, because
pops up on the list where if you just Google, the best episodes, it'll always come up there, and I don't really see it.
no. But another one that's always a favorite for people is called The Housekeeper with Larry Hagman.
Oh yeah.
And even though it's certainly not scary, it's a little kind of campy and silly. I enjoyed that one. I thought it was very clever. And for some reason, the idea that this frog, that creeped me out. Like I was bothered by the idea that as long as he had this frog, everybody was in trouble.
Yeah, I liked all the different cameo appearances we got from different celebrities, even from like Ellie Clamp. I can't remember what her real name is, but
Donna Douglas.
yeah, she was in an episode with Bill Bixby, I think. It was the one where the statue of the monk kind of like tried to control him, and but it was always cool to see like different actors in these episodes that they took part in, and see him in something kind of different, than what you normally see him in.
Right.
Anything else? Any final words you guys want to say on the Night Gallery?
I just, I just still have love for that cemetery one. Like we said, it started out with a bang on the pilot episode, and even watching now, of course, I see that it's not as scary as I remembered because I was a little kid, but I think it kind of set the tone. All the episodes in that pilot kind of set the tone for all the different array of stuff you were going to see. Some, like you said, Hope, they went for outright horror.
Yeah.
Some went for more social commentaries, a sci-fi angle.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple that were just, kind of just slapstick kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But all in all, it's still one, I think, in the grand scheme of things, just doesn't get quite the love maybe that it should. Especially
the one with the paintings, right? Where, every time he sees the painting, there's this monster coming out of the cemetery and it's even closer and closer. That's a really cool, creepy effect. But honest to God, how many times does Roddy McDowell say the word portafoy? Right? Which is Ossie Davis's character name. Yeah. He must say portafoy 300 times. Yeah. And I just kept thinking, couldn't you have given him like a less weird name if you're going to keep saying it again and again and again? Could you learn the man's first name?
Yeah, no, I mean, Night Gallery. It's a really cool. It has more hits. I don't know. I guess it has more hits than misses, and it's definitely an entertaining show. Like if you guys out there haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. I think there's some places you can see it online. I think Dave, you said it's on. Season 2 and 3 are on Hulu.
Yeah, up until today, season 1 was removed, which really scarred me on my notes today. But season 2 or 3 are currently available on Hulu Plus if you subscribe to that. Otherwise, there's really not much on YouTube. You just gotta buy the series.
Yeah.
And we want to tell everybody to go check out Fright Club. The Fright Club podcast is a great podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. It was a blast to have you guys on the show today.
Well, we enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. We like I said, we're big fans of your guys' show, so definitely want to return the favor and have you guys come on our show. And
however, I'm going to butt right in and say this is the third time that I've had the pleasure of recording with you guys, and we still have not made it past the 1970s. we may have to do something modern for a change.
Well, that's
if
where I
we
feel
want.
most comfortable.
Playboy Mansion. So.
Well, that wraps up our Night Gallery discussion on this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. As always, you can keep up with what's going on with us here in the Black Cat Shadow on social media. You can find us on Facebook and Horror Amino, and you can also find us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @BlackCatPodcast. You can also send us an email with any comments, questions, or concerns at blackcatpodcast@gmail.com. And you can always, one way to help out the show is to definitely subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us a review and tell us what you think of the show. And, we always love to hear from you guys. We always like to hear about ways we can improve and make this show more of what you guys want to hear. And you can always visit our website at www.blackcatshadow.com, where you find all of our past episodes that we've recorded up to this point. And you can listen to them right off the website, or you'll find the links there to download them to the app of your choice. And you'll also find the link to our movie store. We sell some out-of-print Blu-rays, DVDs, and VHS tapes. And so you can definitely help out the show when you buy a movie there. So I encourage you guys to go check that out. And stay tuned for next month. I think we decided that our theme for this next month is going to be witches. And we had a really cool interview that we did with Daniel Myrick. He was one of the directors from the original Blair Witch Project movie, so definitely stay tuned for that. And then we're also going to have just to carry on the theme of witches, we are going to have a discussion about witchcraft, the history of witchcraft, and how we see it portrayed in movies. And it'll be an interesting conversation about that. So definitely stay tuned for next month, guys. Some great episodes coming your way. So remember to take a closer look at the world around you, and you may just find that it is stranger and more mysterious than you thought, especially in the Black Cat Shadow.